Contractors know more than you do about permitting, and they use that to exploit you. One of my favorite tricks they use is what I call the hostage. Now, I'm Ross, been flipping houses for 15 years, been a GC for over 10 years, pulled permits in 31 different municipalities in 6 different states, hired hundreds of contractors. So I deal with a lot of this. Now, I'm going to show you exactly the little tricks that they play. I'm going to show you how you deal with inspection related change orders with these contractors and the tight spot that you're in with it, how you pay these guys to not get into a tight spot, and what the heck you do when the contractor says they don't need to pull permits on this one, because usually they're supposed to. They're just trying to make it cheaper. So let's start with the hostage. Okay, this is the dirty contractor trick number 1. So if you have been watching the rest of the videos, you know how the permitting game works. So go back and watch the other ones in this series, but you know that you have to pull permits and the general permit and then the different permits underneath it. So this contractor will go in and they'll pull the permit. Let's just say it's an electrician. Electrician pulls the permit and they give you a bid to do that work. You may have been against 3 different electricians that you were having bid this job. One says it's going to be $10,000. The other one says it's going to be $9,500. And then this other one says it's going to be $8,000. And you're like, oh yeah, let me do the one for $8,000. Okay. Because this contractor is a dirty contractor and he knows how the permitting game works. So he knows that once he gets that permit and starts the work, well, it's going to be really hard for you to get him off of that. And he also knows that the inspector is going to come in on the rough inspection and he's going to say, hey, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And if the inspector says X, Y, and Z, this is like the car salesman example, good cop, bad cop. Well, it's not me that says it. It's the inspector that says I have to do this other work. Okay, so just think about this strategy that the dirty contractor might use on you, that he said it was going to be $8,000 while the other guy said $10,000 because he had a smaller scope of work. All right, so he was able to do it for cheaper. But if you are not an experienced and educated investor, which you should be educated, and you should join my free For Now School community that's in the description below so you can become educated. But if you're not one of these educated investors, you just saw that it's cheaper. And, it seems like I'm going to get the same outcome, a passing electrical inspection final. Great. That's what I want. And I want my pretty lights. But the scope was slightly different. Okay, the one that was saying 10,000, he was actually being good. He was saying all the things that he knew would end up coming up in the inspection. But because we have a negative opinion of contractors, a lot of times for good reasons, we thought that guy was trying to screw us over. So we thought we outsmarted everybody by doing the $8,000 bid. But what actually happened is the guy that gave the $8,000 bid, he knew the inspector would come in and say, oh, dude, you have to do X, Y, and Z before we'll pass the rough inspection. And now he knows that he can go back to you because you're over a barrel. And he says, oh, hey, I got to do this extra work. It's going to be $4,000. So now it's even more than the original bid. And that is how the hostage works, because it's really difficult to get a contractor off of a permit. So let's talk about that. How do you actually fire a contractor if you need to? Because they are holding down think of it as the placement for electrical permit. They're holding it down. They need to get out of the way so you can get a new guy in. So you actually usually have to have them sign off to release their permit. And if you're in a dispute with them, you can see how that might get difficult and definitely time consuming. And not only that, but anybody who comes in after somebody, they're going to charge more. And every contractor ever thinks that the contractor before them was crappy and did a crappy job. And, oh God, everything he did is wrong. We got to redo it all. You'll hear that from everybody. Side note here, if you hear that, just like everybody learned how to do things differently. It doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay. So please see through that. But anyway, point is that you pay that guy $8,000 to do the job. he doesn't get the job done because the inspector comes in and says there's more work that needs to be done. The guy that takes over is going to charge you more, probably rightfully so. So you're in a situation here if you actually fire that person. So how do you manage these guys through a change order? For one, I hope you don't put yourself in the hostage situation. I hope that you look at the initial scope of work, and I hope that you have educated yourself well enough and more over time so you know what should be expected in a scope of work for a rough inspection, so on and so forth. And I know that sounds crazy that, well, I'm not an electrician. How should I possibly know that? Well, you need to learn. It's your business. Your business. House flipping or burring is just running a construction company. Okay, that's all it is. You pick up clients a little differently. Instead of going out and bidding jobs for a client who wants to hire you, instead you're bidding jobs for a house that you're trying to buy. You're saying, hey, it's going to cost $50,000 to fix this up, so I can only give you $100,000 for the house. Same kind of thing. And then you do construction. And then when you're done with the project, you sell it instead of collecting your final check. It's a construction company. Okay, so learn your trade here. Okay, but how do you deal with the change order? Hopefully you did it right in the first place. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But it's just like any other change order. Okay, you have to be willing to go through the time it takes to get other bids, and if needed, to fire the contractor and go through the process of signing them off. That's not the ideal situation. Okay, but if you actually do have to get in that situation, that probably means that that guy didn't care about the relationship with you. They were just trying to take you on a ride. And if that is the case, it's probably worth it to go build a relationship with somebody else. But if you can repair it all and get it through, that would be the ideal thing. Okay, so it's a tough situation when you have to fire a permitted contractor. Now, the best manager for any contractor, especially one on permits, is the paycheck. The management is always in the paycheck. And what I see a lot of times, now you guys have learned the inspection flow because of previous videos we've done here. But what I see a lot of times is the contractors know how the inspections come down the line and what the inspector will require of them. They usually figure out a way to get more money up front because my number one rule is always be ahead on the money, meaning they've done more work. I owe them more money than what I paid them. They've done $10,000 worth of work. So far, I've only paid them $8,000. Therefore, I owe them $2,000. That's always the position that I want to be in because the money is the manager. Okay, they need $2,000 from me. Therefore, they're coming back to my job site. Okay. Now, I'm reasonable about all that. That's not for this video, but when it comes to permitting, it gets more confusing because the amount of work that is actually done is different than it seems. All right, so for an electrical inspection permit, for instance, if I hire an electrician, this $10,000 electrician, let's say, for easy math here. Okay, he said he was going to do $10,000, do the job for $10,000. But he does the rough end stuff. That's like the wiring inside the wall and the boxes are made up, your light switch boxes and receptacles or outlets. But they don't actually put in the switches and stuff. They just make up the box and kind of close it up. That way drywall can come in or whatever. And later at final, they're going to finish all that stuff. They'll put the light fixtures on the ceilings. They'll put in the switches. They'll put in the receptacles. They'll do, a few other things. And okay, so they have $10,000 and, probably at rough end, they're going to be like, well, I want 8,000 of it there. You can't do that because then they have no incentive to come back. Okay. So for one, I don't pay anything until the rough inspection is done. I'll pay when the rough inspection is done. And I pay, usually I try to do like 60, maybe 65% at rough inspection for electrical specifically. And then I pay the rest after the final inspection has been passed and signed off on. Plumbing is pretty similar. HVAC, you got to pay a little bit more up front because they have higher material costs. They have to pay for the HVAC, like the units. And also there's not as much on final there, not much at all. So generally I would pay more, 80, 90% there. And then with the building inspections, once again, if there's any of this is confusing you, go back to the first video of this series. On the rough inspection, there are a lot of things that come up on a final building inspection. Smoke alarms, making sure the seal for like the attic access is correct, making sure railings are the right distance apart, making sure that handrails on stairs are there. They'll look at some things that require you to open up walls again, if they didn't get caught on rough inspection. So this is where a lot of people get themselves caught. They have a general contractor or like an all-arounder type. If they're their own general contractor, you'd hire an all-arounder, and they've already overpaid them. They don't realize that they're behind on the money, and now they have to pray for goodwill to get the contractor to come back. And it's not that the guys don't have goodwill. It's just that money matters, and everybody's always working on a tight budget, and they just it's like those bug zapper lights. It's like that's the money, and they have to go to the jobs that have the money, and they're just drawn to it because it's a tough business and they need the money to keep things going. They have the best intentions to come back to your job and do it, but unfortunately you paid them all the money, and they just aren't bound by nature to come back and see you. That's just the reality. Gets a little bit more complex with the inspections and the permits. Things are tough out there. A lot of money to be made in this business. Is a phenomenal business, but you got to learn these things. That's why I got a free, for now, school community link in the description. Now, next, I need to tell you guys about exactly how to fight an inspector, okay? Because sometimes things just don't go the way that you think they should go. And sometimes it's because an inspector is on a power trip, and you need to know how to legally and professionally argue and fight back. And that's what I'm going to teach you about. So check out this video right here. See you guys soon.